In this lessons episode, discover how top performers avoid burnout by managing energy instead of time. Learn how small recharge habits like walking or breathing can quickly restore focus. Learn how recognizing your energy zones helps you return from survival mode to peak performance, and learn how having a clear purpose turns scattered effort into focused, meaningful action. I mean, you've been working and you've been building for so long. I guess you see a significant difference. For me, I'm 34. So I see all the same people burning out, but it just seems like my peers, it seems like almost like a prerequisite for building a successful career, because so many of them are doing it. I know it's not, but it just seems to be the norm, right? And if you look at your entire career, nobody can look at you and say that you didn't basically accomplish what most people would dream to accomplish running publicly traded Fortune 500 companies. It's pretty much the extreme of stress and performance and whatever you want to accomplish. That's right up there. But even, coming from you, it's interesting. You're saying that people are still not, the way that people work right now is not a healthy way for people to work, even though you come from an environment of running one of the largest companies in the world.
Well, but they don't, the interesting thing is many people think, oh, this is great advice, but I don't have the time for it. And what they don't realize is that many of the energy practices do not need much time. You have to have a conceptual understanding, and I give you the extreme example of this. I mean, if you look at top tennis players, the average top games last about more than 2 hours, So, and they cannot just say, I have 20 minutes of time, I recharge, even though it's a hot day and I'm playing in Australia, So the Tennis Association allows you only 20 seconds between the serves. It's 20 seconds. That's your kind of relaxation time. But what they have learned is how to condition themselves, in such a way that in these 20 seconds, they can fully recharge. I mean, not fully, but maximum recharge. And there are techniques around how you do that. And what you see it today when you watch a tennis game, they all have their routines. And when they get the new balls, they do something with it, something odd. Everybody has an odd, strange routine. They squeeze it, take 3 balls, squeeze it, throw 2 away, get another one. Why they do that, they have a movie going through their head, that completely recharges them. This is a learned routine. And these are things that pretty much all of the kind of top-notch pros, use today, including also special forces. I mean, everybody uses that, Breathing plays a big important role. Yes, you have to have physical fitness. Yes, no doubt, helps, But I think the discovery of saying, if I recharge is part of performance, I mean, downtime is productive time. But it doesn't mean that you have to have equal downtime to the productive time. That's not necessary. You can develop micro habits. A good friend of mine, he works in Hong Kong at a high rise. His micro routine is he gives his cell phone to his assistant, and then drives down on the elevator, takes a few minutes walk around the block, fresh air goes up again, And if somebody calls him, his assistant is right there and says, wait a second, he will come back in the next 10 minutes. I call you back. That's easy. And everybody can do that, And there's a ton of stuff like that that I also wanted to put out and put into the books. Very practical things, to recharge.
I think that's important too. I think that even those small things can really help somebody reframe. The worst thing you can do is just sit with your thoughts and stress for hours on end. And now, because we're virtual, I mean, myself included, we don't even leave the house if we don't force ourselves to leave the house. So you just end up sitting with your own thoughts. You have a really good story in the book about the miracle on the Hudson and why this illustrates it. Explain to me why this, you can walk through the story, but explain why it sort of ties back to this concept.
Well, this now comes to the dynamics of energy. And what happened, Sadie Sullivan is the captain, it's a nice day and cold, like today. It's cold, it's sunny, it's blue sky, and they are going down south, and they are talking to each other, the co-pilot and him, and then a flock of geese hit a flock of geese while they are ascending, and And first one engine goes off, then the other engine goes off. And those who know New York, he comes from LaGuardia. He turns to the left. It's where the George Washington Bridge is. Over the George Washington Bridge, both engine goes off. There's an airport right there. He thinks he can get there, but then he realizes it won't get him there, and then he basically turns left and goes and lands in the Hudson. So the likelihood of landing a plane safely on water is close to zero. So the guy's kind of crazy. But when you see what's been happening is he goes obviously from he's relaxed, he is in basic almost like in relaxation. It's a beautiful day, they're going home, you had a great time in New York. So his colleague is a good friend, blah blah blah. They are talking to each other about what's happening in New York. Boom, these skis come on. He goes from basically relaxation, and to performance zone to survival zone. Boom, survival zone. What happens in survival zone? Adrenaline, this beautiful thing of adrenaline kicks in. Hormones, and adrenaline is extremely good. It makes us superhuman. So your focus shifts. All other body functions get reduced. You're completely focused on the task. And you are literally superhuman. But then if you stay in that too long, you burn out. Boom. So, but what he does, he then switches back to performance zone. He basically you can see it in the transcript. He first asks the tower, can I land there in New Jersey? They give him permission to land. Then he turns around, doesn't even talk to the tower anymore, picks up the microphone and says, prepare for impact to the cabin. And then he lands. So how can somebody do this? He did it purely in performance zone. And why was he able to go with two engines off, landing on that and to go back into performance zone? Because he has trained this in a simulator thousands of times. Not only has he trained it in his training, but he was a trainer from the airline. So obviously experience helps. If you can move into a pattern where you say, I know what's going on here. I know how to handle this. And now we're going to land that plane. So he managed to go back between these patterns, extremely well, extremely well.
It's interesting. And if you're talking to an entrepreneur or somebody who's earlier on in their career, what would be the advice to manage these different energy zones for sort of peak performance so you don't burn out?
Well, the first one is, relaxation time is productive time. Don't go into the thought and think of an ultra marathon, where you push and push and push and eventually and forget to recharge. Eventually you hit the wall and that's it. No. Find a way how you can, get into your performance zone. And when you feel, yeah, you know what, do some recharging. Again, recharging can be very short, like my friend in Hong Kong. Get down on the elevator, go out, listen to a piece of music, or whatever you like that gives you energy. There's thousands of things. Listen to a painting, or whatever, or call a friend for 5 minutes, write a nice email or whatever gives you energy, and then get back in it. Just get back in it, or close your eyes, do a breathing exercise, boom, gets you back into it. That's one thing. Secondly, whenever you feel you're going from performance zone into survival zone, understand that has a positive one because you're now superhuman. It has also a positive one because you're expanding your comfort zone. So it's good if you do that once in a while, but the moment this goes on, it's like you're on a clock. Now you have to make sure that you're relatively quickly going back to your performance zone. So in reality, you have to find a way how you frame the situation differently, so that you are able to go back into your performance zone, right? So take an action that gets you out of the survival zone into your performance zone, or train this in a controlled environment, like Sully has done. He's been in a simulator in a controlled environment on smaller. I've done restructurings many times, and it started with small restructurings, and they got big, and then they got very big, and they got gigantically big, But if I had done the gigantically big one, I probably would have died, So, but as I knew going into it, I had a pattern recognition and said, oh, this is happening. Oh, this is happening. So, you know how to handle it,
You mentioned something, so I want to move on to, I want to move on to some of the restructurings and sort of some transformational leadership stories that you've been a part of, because I think that, I mean, you have some incredible stories. You can pick which ones, I mean, you think are most relevant to the audience, but one that in particular I found interesting was I mean, you managed the Siemens X-ray division turnaround. You managed Alcoa from 2008, 2009. There was some crises that you dealt with. So talk to me about, I mean, now we understand sort of the playbook for what is optimal leadership, what is optimal leadership for yourself, for your team, for your company. Now, you've applied this very successfully. So let's talk about how a leader operating in their right mind actually sort of executes.
Well, I mean, I think it brings us to the pinnacle that connects us, because on the energy side, the one thing we didn't talk about was purpose. We haven't talked about purpose, and purpose is what a laser does to light. When light is normally is diffuse, you turn it into laser, it brings it into a beam that can literally go through any material, destroy anything, and that's what purpose does to energy. Energy is diffuse, you have it, but the moment you say, this is my purpose, or these are my purposes, you suddenly have something where the energy goes into tune, you know? So this is important. Now, purpose on the business side, if you want to translate your own purpose or the purpose of the business into the people who work for you, what we would need a vision. We need a vision that makes them understand I'm doing something that has a higher value than just putting together X-ray machines, and or angiography machines, And the problem there was at Siemens, it was the longest standing division in medical, super successful, so the birthplace of Siemens Medical. But it has kind of been put into the shadow by the more modern ones like ultrasound, computed tomography, magnetic resonance, and was also not making money. So many people had tried to turn it around, and then they gave it to me, kind of another guy trying it out, And I asked them to be able to go to hospitals to see how the equipment is used, and that was the moment, when my aha moment, because I realized when I saw the patient and talked to the doctors that we had something that nobody else had. We actually could use the X-ray for not just the diagnosis, but also for the intervention, for the cure. And you may remember, you're too young probably to remember, but many other might remember, there was a time when surgery was the thing. These days, fortunately, you can do a lot called minimally invasive, So where literally not even anesthesia is needed for this. And that needs image guidance in most cases, So you need an X-ray machine to see where is this thing in your body that they are pushing through, So I had this idea. Then I invited a young woman to our all hands meeting, who I knew, whose life was saved, by exactly that, the right diagnosis with our equipment, and then also treatment. And didn't tell anybody. She told her story, and I gave her, in the medical environment, you have stringent regulations. So you have to document who worked on what machine. So I gave her the list of all people who had worked on the machines that she was diagnosed and treated with. She read out this names and brought the people on stage. Whoa, I mean, these are people in the northern part of Bavaria who cannot easily be moved, They've seen a lot in their lives, But on that day, there were a lot of people with tears in their eyes, So now I mean, in the evening, the head of the labor union basically told me, Klaus, you brought our soul back, So because before they saw themselves as a restructuring case, and I'd completely forgotten what great things they have been doing. And I told some of the people on the shop floor, who were late with their equipment, I said, do you understand that this equipment goes to the US, to that little village? The village has just taken the old machine out, and now in the radius of about 100 miles, people cannot be diagnosed. Are you aware that this is what's happening because we cannot get this machine shipped on time? And the moment people understand this is one thing, but the moment they see a patient and realize, this could be me, this could be my mother, this could be my sister, that makes all the difference. I mean, so from that on, motivational, I don't think we had an issue, and business-wise, we did the right things.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you want to dive deeper into this conversation, check out the links in the description to watch the full episode. See you in the next one.